Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat Tene Brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah Tejovari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha Dhamna swena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuraho Rasika Bovi Bhavuka. We now enter the 8th chapter of the 12th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Shaunaka, the head of the rishis who are listening in Naimisharanyam to Suta Maharishi, he asks a question. So, as we have already seen, Suta Maharishi is now wrapping up the narration after concluding the long dialogue between Shuka Brahmam and Parikshit. So he after that described the Vedas, how they were divided into 4, and the Puranas and the 18 Puranas. So one of them is Markandeya. So that triggers a question in Shaunaka because he has a question on Markandeya. He says to Suta Maharishi, O great Suta, you are so learned, you have listened directly from Shuka Brahmam and you are very wise. I have a question on Markandeya because people say that Markandeya is a sage blessed with a very long life and he also lived through a dissolution of Pralaya. We already saw the various types of dissolution or Pralaya, and it is said that Markandeya lived through a major Pralaya or a dissolution of the universe. However, the doubt Shaunaka has is Markandeya was born in this very epoch and there has been no pralaya that has happened yet, because this epoch he refers to is the epoch in which all these yugas are taking place, and Markandeya was born, and after Markandeya was born, the next dissolution has not happened, and yet it is said that Markandeya went through a dissolution drifting alone in water, and while in the water he saw the Supreme Being in the form of a baby on the leaf of a banyan tree. So this is a famous vision that is sung as Bala Mukundashtakam, the young baby Krishna lying on the leaf of a banyan tree, floating in the causal waters, the deluge that has swallowed the whole universe. So it is said that in that deluge there is a small banyan leaf floating, on which Krishna is in the form of a young baby floating there, and Markandeya beheld that form. So this is a famous incident in the Puranas, and it's also the source of a beautiful prayer called Balamukundashtakam. So Suta Maharishi is being asked by Shaunaka, how is this possible? Because this deluge has not happened after Markandeya was born, because we are still in the same epoch which has not ended. So please clear our doubt. So Suta Maharishi responds, and this will be the subject matter of the next 3 chapters, because Markandeya's story is a very special story that has been asked by Shaunaka, and Markandeya has a whole Purana after him. So he summarizes the story, which is very auspicious. Suta Maharishi says, Markandeya is such a great sage, and I'm so glad you asked about him. And also it gives another opportunity to glorify Narayana, the Supreme Being. So he says Markandeya was born to his father in the line of sages, and he was given the sacred right of wearing the sacred thread, being initiated into the Vedas, and he studied them properly, and he was equipped with wisdom and asceticism, tapo jnana. It's called tapaswadhyaya niratam. He was endowed with the wealth of tapas and wisdom, that is austerity and true wisdom were the wealth he carried, and he was free of all passions even at a young age. It is said that he wore matted locks on his hair, and with his sacred thread, and with a simple clothing made of bark, and with a staff in his hand, and with a kamandalu, which is a vessel made of shell of coconut to take food and so on, or water and so on, and wearing the skin of a black buck deer, and carrying a rosary of Rudraksha beads. So, a very simple adornment, a simple way in which he is dressed, simply wearing the skin of a deer and bark on top, matted locks on his hair, a rosary of Rudraksha beads, and carrying a staff and a kamandalu, that is a stick and a vessel. And with this, he goes about and he is with his guru, and it is said that he is worshipping Sri Hari morning and evening through the sacred fire, through the sun, through his guru, and through other sages, as well as through his own self. So that's the essence of how to worship, by seeing him in everyone. He says through sacred fire, Agni, through the sun, Arka, through the guru, his preceptor, through the sages, Vipraha, and through Swayam, that is through his own self, he adored the Supreme Being, which is to say the only Supreme Being who is through everyone. He is the essence of the cows, the sages, the guru, and as well as his own self. So he worshipped him morning and evening. He would go collect food by way of alms for his guru and himself, and he would silently partake of it after his guru has eaten, and some days there would not be food even. He was very committed to austerities and study of the Vedas, and he engaged in complete meditation on the Supreme Being Sri Hari, which was a great astonishment even for Brahma, it is said, and even Shiva and Bhrigu, the great sage, Daksha, the various Prajapatis, everybody was astonished at the austerity of this young boy Markandeya. And he was equipped with asceticism and study of Vedas, as already said, and he turned inward. He got over all obstacles in terms of ignorance, egotism, likes and dislikes, fear of death. All of that were completely destroyed in him, because he had lost all attachment to mind and body and so on, and turned inward. He was completely meditating upon Sri Hari, and in this way a very long period went, it is said. And seeing this, Indra was very disturbed, and he wanted to interrupt or disturb the tapas of Markandeya. So Indra does this many times. He did this with Vishwamitra too. So Indra is the lord of the heaven. So it is the kingdom of pleasure, and the sage transcends pleasure and pain, and therefore the sage has to overcome the temptations of pleasure. And so in every great sage, it is seen that pleasure and pleasure-based temptations are brought to distract him, and the ones who don't fall for it, they transcend it. And Indra is the one who does always this temptation. So he sends the army of temptation to Markandeya. He sends beautiful singers, Gandharvas, beautiful women, Apsaras, and Cupid, the deity for passion, that is Kama, as well as the deity overseeing spring season, the southern wind, and lust itself. And they all came to his hermitage. So the hermitage of Markandeya, along with many other hermitages of the various sages there, they are all on the Himalayas. So it's a beautiful portion of the Himalayas, on the slopes of the Himalayas, where the river Pushpabhadra flows. And in this hallowed site, there were sacred trees and creepers, beautiful pools of water, lakes of water, and many Brahmana sages engaged in meditation. Lovely looking trees with flowers having honey and having intoxicated bees swirling around them, cuckoos singing and peacocks dancing, and a beautiful breeze flowing, waterfalls carrying the fragrance of flowers. So it's a very beautiful place. And there, the spring season was made to appear by the deity who came, in order to make it very beautiful. And the rising moon was brought forth. So every way it was made to be very pleasant for the senses, to make it conducive for sense gratification. And then the Gandharvas, the bands of musicians, and the Apsaras, they all came. Then they all saw this sage, Markandeya. He was sitting with eyes closed near a sacred fire, pouring oblations into it and looking himself like fire. So, seeing this, they decided to tempt him. So, the women started dancing, the singers started singing, and the season was made so pleasant, the air was made so fragrant, and the place was made so enchanting. And the principal Apsara called Punjikasthali, she was especially engaged in distracting him through very suggestive poses. She was wearing very beautiful clothing and she was having slender waist and very beautiful features and wearing flowers on her hair and with very expressive eyes and the breeze blowing away her garment, and she was doing all kinds of things to tempt him. And so was the music and dance and this and the season and the air and everything, and yet nothing could move the sage. So it is said that there was nothing, all this had not a single small impact on the sage. He was completely unperturbed and remaining still. So, looking at this, they all felt like they were scorched by his glory. They came to tempt him, but they recognized that they were like little children in front of a snake. So when children come to play in a garden, they are all with full of frolic and mischief. Then suddenly they see a snake and then they all run away. So similarly, it is said that these people came like children, not knowing the greatness and majesty of the sage, and to them he looked like a snake, in that he only instilled in them awe and trepidation. So they left instantly and they went and reported to Indra that the sage doesn't have a iota of egotism or attachment. So Indra himself was astonished by it and he recognized the greatness of the sage. Now, having been put through this test, he was blessed now with the grace of the Lord. It is said that Nara Narayana appeared. We have seen before, Nara Narayana are the two forms of the Lord, which is the source of Arjuna and Krishna too. Nara is the perfect human and Narayana is the supreme being. So Sri Hari, the supreme being, takes the form of Nara and Narayana. Nara is light complexion, Narayana is dark complexion. Both of them are wearing the beautiful clothing of black buck skin and bark and having four arms and lotuses. And their eyes look like lotuses and they are carrying lotus seeds with them. They are having a bamboo staff with them. They are so tall in stature. They have a golden luster in their body and they manifest there to give darshan to this sage Markandeya. Markandeya is so pleased to see them and he rises up instantly and he falls like a log on the ground. Dandavat, danda is a stick, like a stick dandavat. He falls on the ground to offer his obeisances, prostrations. Then he is feeling exhilarated. Eyes are filled with tears, hair is standing on end, and his throat is choking. And with that, he says, "Hail to you both. Namo nama iti ishanau babhashe gadgadaksharaha." With his throat choking, with his voice faltering, he said, "Hail to you, hail to you." And then he brought water. He brought them a nice seat to sit, washed their feet, and then applied sandal paste and incense and garlands and all. And then once they were seated, he offered a beautiful prayer. Markandeya said, "How can I even glorify you? Kim varneya tava vibho." How can I glorify you? Because you are the source of everything. You bring forth the vital air. You bring forth speech. You bring forth mind. You bring forth all the senses, not only for humans, but also for Brahma himself. You are the two forms of the Supreme Self, that is Nara and Narayana, and you stop suffering instantly by your grace, and your grace gives liberation to all beings. And yet you assume all these forms and withdraw these forms like a play, just as a spider does. A spider spins a web out of its own self and then swallows it back into itself. Similarly, he says you bring forth all these forms, all these avatars, and then you take it back into yourself, and contemplating upon you will ensure that no impurities rise. Any impurities due to the three gunas or due to time, any of these impurities have no ground for sprouting when one is dedicated to your lotus feet. And that is why all the great sages, they only dedicate themselves to your lotus feet, which is treasured in all the Vedas. And there is no other safe refuge for the apparent individuals who are caught in the fear of separation other than you. So the apparent individual is caught in identification with the body and mind, and through that he is feeling the fear of separation, and for them there is no refuge other than you, who are the Supreme Being, the embodiment of beatitude. Therefore, what other source of meditation can be there other than you? So I completely renounce any attachment whatsoever to this body and to anything connected with it. I completely am free of any sense of me and mine, and I take refuge only in your lotus feet, the Supreme Being you are, the embodiment of true wisdom. And he says further that you are, of course, the source of the three gunas, Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas, and all three gunas which are responsible for creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe are all coming from you alone. And yet the Sattvika form, the pure form, is the most conducive, and that is the form of Narayana, which is glorified in all the Vedas. Therefore, I offer my worship to you. Then he offers a very beautiful verse of prayer. He says, Hail to you, O Lord, the inner controller of all pervading, the very form of the universe, the Guru, the teacher of the universe, the one who appears as Narayana and Nara, the one whose speech is so sweet and controlled, and the one who protects the Vedas. He says, Tasmai namo bhagavate purushaya bhumne vishvaya vishwagurave paradevatayai narayanaya rishaye cha narottamaya hamsaya samyatagire nigameshwaraya. So all these adjectives, each one of them is very beautiful. Supreme Being, Bhagavate Purushaya, Vishvaya, the very universe you are, Vishwagurave, the very teacher of this universe, Narayanaya Rishaye, the Supreme Rishi Narayana, Narottamaya, the Supreme Human Nara, Nigameshwaraya, the protector of the Vedas. All of this is you. Hail to you, Namo Namaha. And therefore he says, the one whose judgment is clouded through your own Maya does not recognize you, even though you are always here and now present in everything as all pervading. But the one who is bestowed by grace, bestowed with your grace, he perceives you, he cognizes you as the essence of all that there is. Therefore I bow to you, O Supreme Being, the one who reveals the secret of the true self, the one who is the essence of the Vedas, the one who even great sages are bewildered about. This is the same expression that comes in the very first verse of Bhagavatam, which we chant every day. Muhyanti Surayaha, we say. So that's exactly that. Even great sages are bewildered by you. So he says, I bow to you, the Supreme Being, who can be a source of bewilderment even for great sages, and yet who is ever present directly as the essence of the whole universe, as the true self of all, as the object of all schools of thought, as the very light that illuminates the whole universe. I bow to you. So with this prayer, Markandeya glorifies Naranarayana, the forms of the Supreme Being who is manifested. And with this chapter ends. In the next chapter, we will see the answer to the question of Shaunaka as to how Markandeya saw a dissolution even though it hasn't happened yet. That will be the next chapter. So with this prayer of Markandeya, this chapter concludes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.